I'm Jill Siegel, and I lead business intelligence here for Xandr. And if you're not familiar, on an annual basis, we conduct the relevance report. And it's pretty awesome. You should check it out. It's on our website. The reason we do that is to really stake a claim in what we see is happening with both marketers and consumers. So about last year, we were talking about what's happening in 2020. And you can't really talk about 2020 without talking about the election. It's just not possible. So we decided to really take a deep dive in how both marketers and consumers feel about all things political advertising. We did a roundtable discussion with partners at Advertiser Perceptions with Beltway insiders, which I've always wanted to use that in a sentence, so check that, to see how they were planning on investing their dollars in 2020. We found that the trend really was changing since 2016. People had gone really hyper-targeted and they were going a bit broader. We also found that people were really focused on local elections. But then we asked the serious questions. Where are you spending your money? We wanted to understand where the budgets were going, and we also wanted to understand where consumers were really spending most of their time. So I had like a bunch of other jokes I wanted to use, one of which was that I dressed like Leslie Knope today on purpose. But that one I feel like needs to be said because it's the most important one. And then the other one is that if you plan on protesting the stage, let me know and I'll prepare Jill Biden style. But you know, different Jill. So before I dig deep into the data, we found that marketers are spending a ton of money this election season. We know that. People really, you couldn't escape a political ad for the past few weeks. We know that we're 1 week past Super Tuesday, which is exciting for a few reasons. Our research showed that this is the exact moment that people are getting more engaged and learning about both the candidates and platforms. But spending on Super Tuesday was also up 700%, and that really, I mean, that was driven by one specific billionaire, but it really was up collectively, and that's a big deal. So, our goal for the research was really 4 different things. We wanted to understand the general market perceptions around politics and political advertising. We wanted to identify the challenges facing political advertising and figure out how they can be overcome. We wanted to look at the platform on which an ad appears and see how that affects engagement. And we wanted to investigate the role of research and what that plays in a voter's decision. Now, I'm aware that we're doing a research presentation and we're talking about research, and I see that that's like kind of inside baseball, but it's true. Independent research was the biggest thing we found. We did 3 different focus groups in January with 5 consumers in each one. Each one was a registered either Democrat, Republican, or independent. And we found that they really do their own research fundamentally when they're making decisions along their voter journey. So the first objective, to understand how consumers think and feel about the state of the current political environment, was really interesting. Regardless of political affiliation, 4 out of 5 voters said that politics have never been more polarizing, which is fundamentally, I think we would agree if you watch any sort of news. 18% of those surveyed said that they don't feel like they can even talk about their political views, and that's even higher among Republicans, with 1 in 4 saying they don't feel comfortable expressing their opinions. We asked voters to describe how they're feeling towards the election, and we saw a really wide range of responses. People felt hopeful, anxious, and excited, and some even felt bored, which I feel like is almost impossible, but that's okay. But really it comes down to that political ads are operating in a state of heightened emotions, except for those who obviously felt bored. But ultimately, 59% of voters feel positively about the 2020 presidential election. And we see that they really feel a sense of empowerment about getting the chance to vote. It's really about what's driving that overall confidence. And it's less about beating the other party or beating the other candidate, and it's more about being excited to exercise their right to vote, which really, internally, we found really empowering. And on the flip side, we see that 41% who feel negatively generally feel this way because they don't trust what's being reported in the media. And in some cases, they don't trust the candidates themselves. About 1/3 of those who feel negatively said that they don't think that their vote matters. And that's really sad, but that's, I think, a topic for another day. But this is a group that's overall tough to engage. They're not going to be receptive as those that are feeling empowered by their vote. Another driver of the negativity is the lack of tolerance and bipartisanship. We heard that a lot in our focus group last year with some of the Beltway insiders, that because of the bipartisanship, that's why a lot of dollars are focusing on local races. People see that they can have more of an impact locally. And we found it interesting that even though so many feel the effects of political polarization, Charlotte, I said it without messing up, is that 74% are proud to live in the United States. And that sentiment holds true across parties. Young adults might feel less affiliation to the United States as a whole, and that's really what's driving that activism that we're seeing. What we found most interesting, despite the polarization, voters are really leaning in as opposed to tuning out. Voters want to cross the aisle, and the way through that is through education. Voters are ultimately looking for ways to get informed. 3 out of 4 voters are eager to learn about the different political issues and views, and that's true of Democrats, Republicans, and independents. Wherever we say independents, I feel like everyone should just clap, because that's what everyone's focused so heavily on right now. But 7 out of 10 voters want to learn more about presidential candidates, and while we might expect that among Democrats, since we're just weeding out the primary season, but we also saw that was true for Republicans. Ultimately, 3 out of 5 voters enjoy spending their time researching different candidates and issues. And that's how voters go about making those decisions. Clearly, I like research a lot, but it's a really big deal. And that's why political ads are so important. Ads can be very powerful in terms of both telling a story and being a catalyst for a voter to start their journey. 63% of voters said the political ads remind them to seek out more information on a candidate or an issue, and nearly a third will talk to a friend or family member about what they've seen in an ad. And most voters are actively watching, reading, and listening to political ads weekly. And they're most likely to watch political ads on television, especially on news, both local and cable. And we were also surprised about how receptive voters were to political ads. And it's not just that they're receptive, they even appreciate them. 8 out of 10 like when political ads educate them, and 5 out of 10 say political ads are valuable resources for how they make their voting decision. The majority agree that political advertising needs to exist, and it's good for voters. So we can all go home, we're done, we can just keep making those media buys. But really, our goal today was to identify some challenges that marketers face, and frequency was the biggest one. 84% of voters said that they dislike seeing the same political ad over and over again. But that fundamentally is the same thing for any marketing buy. Being able to smooth out frequency with not sacrificing reach is the biggest hurdle that we see for most marketers, both either political or general. And one singular challenge facing political advertising is, of course, lack of trust. Only 17% of voters say that they'll trust what they see, read, or hear. And 3 out of 4 worry that it might include fake information. So from our discussions across the country with these independent Democratic and Republican voters, we learned that some will fact check what they see in an ad. And there was a joke there about fact checking, but legal was very not sure about me saying it, but I feel like you can see where I wanted to go with it. And an ad will be more trusted if it's unbiased and it includes data and stats. And this came up with a bunch of our interviews. And that just, to us, was kind of funny because that just shows that voters care about data almost as much as the advertising industry. So nearly 40% of candidates, or nearly 40% of consumers will do more research on a political candidate if the ad includes data. So again, check for research. So now we've heard about the polarization that voters feel, but we need to really think about that tactically when it comes down to both an ad that we're serving and the overall sentiment that they feel when they get it. Voters really dislike negative toned ads. In fact, we found that removing attack-based ads was the biggest way that voters said they'd be more receptive to political advertising. The next best way was to reduce ad frequency. Half the voters say that they'll like the candidate and the party less when they're exposed to an attack-based ad. And 55% said that they feel worried, stressed, or angry after seeing a political ad. And this jumps a bit among independent voters who are consistently the least receptive towards political advertising. And unsurprisingly, given events of 4 years ago, there are certain trust issues around social media platforms. And 77% said they trust political ads on TV more so than they trust them on Facebook. That one made it through legal. But we also see that television rises to the top in terms of a voter's likelihood to watch an ad all the way through. We see the same leading factors that will get a voter to stick around for an entire ad, regardless of whether it appears on TV or social media. The ad needs to tackle a controversial topic, ask thought-provoking questions, and most importantly, give detail on a political candidate's agenda. Roughly 1 in 4 voters said that an ad needs to include background on the candidate's previous political activity. And we heard from voters we spoke to that learning about a candidate's track record is really key to informing their voters' decisions. But relevance is ultimately, wonderfully so, the #1 factor that contributes to a voter engaging in an ad in its entirety. So as long as the ad shows them something relevant to their interests, over a third will stick with it all the way through. So when we first conducted our relevance report 2 years ago, we found that to be relevant, an ad, must meet a consumer need, meet a moment in time, and evoke an emotion. And in the case of political ads, that consumer need is ultimately education. And if an ad educates, has a positive tone, and addresses timely topics, it's relevant. And I have more good news to share, but I'm not running for office, even though I feel like I could do it. I just do. Oh, thank you. Yeah. I got 1 vote. But the most important thing is that by following the relevance recipe, a political marketer can ensure that an ad is relevant, trusted, and it will inspire voters to turn out, and that's really important. So I want to quickly thank the Ad Club for letting me do this today. This was really cool. I've been obsessed with politics since we got extra credit in 7th grade for watching the State of the Union. So this is just bound to happen. But I also really want to thank Jonathan as well, and I also want to thank Charlotte for helping me write all of these wonderful jokes that definitely made your day. So thanks so much.